The late afternoon sun, a tired orange, cast long shadows across the manicured lawns of Meadowbrook, a suburb where the houses were as uniform as the unspoken expectations. General Aalia Vance, United States Army, retired, adjusted the brim of her simple baseball cap, shielding her eyes as she walked her beloved German Shepherd, Maximus. Retirement had brought a different kind of discipline, the quiet rhythm of daily walks, the scent of blooming jasmine, the absence of the constant hum of global crisis. But the discipline of a lifetime in uniform, of commanding thousands, of navigating geopolitical minefields, was etched into her very being. Alia was a woman who carried her history in her posture, straight-backed, purposeful, radiating an authority that needed no rank insignia to be recognized. Her silver-streaked hair, usually pulled back in a severe bun, was loose today, a concession to the warmth. She wore a comfortable tracksuit, the kind that blended into the suburban landscape, making her indistinguishable from any other resident enjoying an evening stroll. This was precisely what she craved: anonymity, peace. Her phone buzzed. It was a secure line, a relic from her active service, reserved for a select few. She saw the caller ID, Secretary of Defense. Aaliyah sighed, a small smile playing on her lips. Even in retirement, some duties lingered. She answered, her voice a low, calm alto. Vance here. She was discussing the intricacies of a new cybersecurity initiative, offering insights gleaned from decades at the forefront of military intelligence. When the cruiser pulled up, slowly, deliberately, it eased alongside the curb, its tinted windows reflecting the setting sun. Two officers, both men, emerged. Their movements were stiff, almost theatrical, as they approached her. "Evening, ma'am," the first officer, a burly man with a neatly trimmed beard and a name tag that read Officer Davis, said, his tone clipped. His partner, younger and leaner, Officer Jenkins, stood a few paces back, his hand resting conspicuously on his holstered weapon. Aaliyah paused her conversation, lowering the phone slightly. "Good evening, officers. Can I help you?" "We've received a complaint," Davis stated, his eyes sweeping over her, lingering on the comfortable tracksuit, the cap, the powerful German Shepherd coat. His gaze held a dismissive quality, a judgment already rendered. "Suspicious individual matching your description, loitering in the area." Aaliyah raised an eyebrow. "Suspicious. I live 2 blocks from here, officer. I'm walking my dog." "License and registration, please," Jenkins interjected, his voice surprisingly sharp for someone so young. Aaliyah felt a familiar prickle of irritation. This wasn't about a complaint. This was about something else. She knew the look, the tone. She'd seen it directed at countless young black men and women throughout her life, long before she wore stars on her shoulders. But she was a general, a 4-star general, and she was tired. "Officers, I'm on a call with the Secretary of Defense," she said, holding up her phone slightly. "This is a secure line. I assure you, I am not loitering. I am a resident." Davis scoffed, a short derisive sound. "Secretary of Defense, huh? And I'm the President. Let's see that ID, ma'am, now." His hand moved to his own sidearm, not drawing it, but making the gesture clear. Aaliyah felt a cold calm descend. She knew how this game was played. She had trained for far more dangerous encounters. She looked directly at Davis, her gaze unwavering. "Officer, I am General Aaliyah Vance, United States Army, retired. I am a 4-star general. I demand to know the specific nature of this complaint and why you are harassing a law-abiding citizen." Davis and Jenkins exchanged a look, a shared smirk passing between them. "General, huh? And I suppose you've got a whole army in that tracksuit, too." Davis chuckled, a harsh, humorless sound. "Look, lady, we don't need your tall tales. You're acting suspicious, you're refusing to comply. That's enough for us." Refusing to comply. "I am asking for due process," Aaliyah stated, her voice still calm, but with an edge of steel that few had ever heard. "You have no probable cause to demand my identification without stating a specific offense." "Oh, we've got probable cause now," Jenkins sneered, stepping closer. "Disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, maybe even impersonating an officer." Aaliyah's eyes narrowed. "Impersonating an officer? I am a general. My rank is earned, not impersonated." "Right," Davis said, pulling out his handcuffs. "Look, we're done here. Hands behind your back, ma'am. You're coming with us." Maximus, sensing the shift in his owner's demeanor, let out a low growl, his hackles rising. "Maximus, stay," Aaliyah commanded, her voice firm, and the dog immediately quieted, though his eyes remained fixed on the officers. Aaliyah extended her wrists, not out of submission, but out of a calculated defiance. She wanted them to do it. She wanted them to make this mistake. "You are making a grave error, officers," she said, her voice a low warning. The cold steel of the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Davis pulled them tight, too tight, a deliberate act of petty cruelty. "Error. The only error here is you thinking you can run your mouth to us, General," he spat, his face inches from hers. "Now, let's go. We'll sort out your rank down at the station." As they began to lead her towards the cruiser, Aaliyah spoke, her voice clear and resonant, cutting through the suburban quiet. "Officer Davis, Officer Jenkins, you have just handcuffed a 4-star general of the United States Army. I am still on the line with the Secretary of Defense. I suggest you put me back on the phone, immediately." Davis laughed, a loud booming sound that echoed across the street. "Yeah, right. The Secretary of Defense. What's he gonna do? Send in the Marines for you, General." Aaliyah looked at him, a glint in her eyes that was both dangerous and utterly calm. "No, officer. He's going to destroy your careers." She then spoke directly into the phone, which was still connected and held loosely in her cuffed hand. "Mr. Secretary, I apologize for the interruption. It appears I am being unlawfully detained by 2 officers from the Meadowbrook Police Department. Their names are Officer Davis and Officer Jenkins. They have just handcuffed me, despite my identifying myself as General Aaliyah Vance, retired, and informing them I was on a secure call with you. I believe they are operating under a severe misunderstanding of military protocol and civilian rights." On the other end of the line, Secretary Thompson's voice, usually calm and measured, was now a low, dangerous growl. "General Vance, are you telling me you are currently in handcuffs?" "Affirmative, Mr. Secretary," Aaliyah replied, her voice steady, "and they are refusing to acknowledge my identity or the nature of this call." The silence on the line was deafening for a moment. Then Secretary Thompson's voice boomed. "Put me on speaker, General, now." Aaliyah, with a surprising dexterity, born of years of training, managed to activate the speakerphone with her cuffed hands. The secretary's voice, amplified, filled the quiet street. "Officer Davis, Officer Jenkins. This is Secretary of Defense Mark Thompson. Qua. You have exactly 10 seconds to uncuff General Vance and apologize profusely, or I will personally ensure that your careers, and the careers of every single person in your chain of command who allowed this to happen, are obliterated. Do you understand me?" The color drained from Officer Davis's face. His jaw went slack. Officer Jenkins, who had been sneering just moments before, looked like he'd seen a ghost. The booming voice, the undeniable authority, the sheer weight of the title Secretary of Defense hanging in the air. It was like a physical blow. "Mr. Secretary, sir, we didn't know," Davis stammered, his voice suddenly small, terrified. "You didn't know," Thompson roared. "General Vance identified herself. She told you she was on a secure call with me. What part of that did you fail to comprehend, officer?" Davis fumbled with the handcuffs, his hands shaking so badly he could barely get the key into the lock. Jenkins stood frozen, his face ashen, his hand no longer resting on his weapon, but dangling uselessly at his side. The cuffs clicked open. Aaliyah rubbed her wrists, her gaze still fixed on the two terrified officers. "Now," Thompson's voice continued, slightly calmer but no less menacing, "I want a full, unreserved apology from both of you, directed to General Vance. And then, I want you to stand by for a call from your chief of police, who will be hearing from me directly. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir, crystal clear, sir," Davis blurted out, practically saluting. "General Vance, ma'am," Jenkins began, his voice trembling. "We are so incredibly sorry. We made a mistake. A huge mistake. We had no idea. No idea." Aaliyah interjected, her voice cutting. "You had no idea because you chose not to believe. You chose to dismiss. You chose to disrespect. Qua. Your mistake wasn't just about my rank, officers. It was about your prejudice. It was about seeing a black woman in a tracksuit and assuming she was suspicious. That is the real problem here." Davis, his face a mask of shame, nodded mutely. "You're right, ma'am. You're absolutely right. We apologize. Sincerely." "Good," Aaliyah said, her tone softening slightly, but still firm. "Kano, if you'll excuse me, Mr. Secretary and I have a cybersecurity initiative to discuss, and I believe you two have a very important call to await." She raised the phone back to her ear, turning her back on the two officers, who stood rooted to the spot, their careers already crumbling around them. "Mr. Secretary," Aaliyah said into the phone, her voice back to its calm, professional tone. "As I was saying, the distributed ledger technology offers significant advantages in securing sensitive data. Gun." She walked away, Maximus trotting faithfully by her side, leaving the two officers standing in the fading sunlight, their faces pale, their uniforms suddenly feeling too heavy. The silence that followed her departure was thick with the weight of their shattered careers, a silence far more profound than any laughter. The fallout was swift and brutal. Within hours, the story, albeit heavily sanitized for public consumption, began to leak. High-ranking military official unlawfully detained by local police. The Pentagon, under immense pressure from Secretary Thompson, launched an immediate top-level investigation. Chief Randall Thorne, head of the Meadowbrook Police Department, was on the phone with Secretary Thompson for nearly an hour. His face a shade of purple usually reserved for overripe plums. The details, as relayed by Thompson, were damning. Not only had his officers detained a 4-star general, but they had done so with blatant disregard for her identity, her rights, and common decency. The racial undertones of the encounter were not lost on anyone. Officer Davis and Officer Jenkins were immediately placed on administrative leave, their badges and weapons confiscated. The internal investigation was thorough, merciless. Witness statements from concerned residents who had seen the interaction, coupled with Aaliyah's own detailed account, painted a clear picture of racial profiling and abuse of power. Within a week, both officers were formally terminated. Their records flagged. Their chances of ever working in law enforcement again, anywhere, were effectively zero. Coney. The story, though never explicitly mentioning race in mainstream media, became a cautionary tale within police departments nationwide. Know who you're stopping, and don't let your prejudices blind you. For Chief Thorne, the repercussions were severe. While he wasn't fired, his department was placed under federal oversight, a clear signal of deep-seated systemic issues. His career, once on an upward trajectory, was now irrevocably stained. Aaliyah, meanwhile, returned to her quiet retirement, though it was no longer quite so anonymous. The incident, despite her best efforts to downplay it, had brought her back into the public eye, albeit briefly. She received calls from senators, from fellow generals, from civil rights organizations. She gave a few carefully worded statements, emphasizing the need for police reform and accountability, but mostly, she sought to fade back into the background. One evening, a few weeks after the incident, Aaliyah was in her study, reviewing some old military strategy texts, when her doorbell rang. She opened it to find Jamal, the young basketball player from Northwood High, standing on her porch, looking nervous. He held a small, carefully wrapped package. "General Vance, ma'am," Jamal stammered, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and embarrassment. I just wanted to say thank you, for what you did, for standing up to them, and for being you." Aaliyah smiled warmly. "Jamal, it's Aaliyah. What's this?" He handed her the package. Inside was a framed photograph, a crisp, new print of the 1978 Northwood Hawks national championship team. And in the center, prominently displayed, was a young James, the Ghost Harrison, smiling, holding the trophy. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "To General Aaliyah Vance, from the Northwood High School basketball team, for showing us what true strength looks like." Aaliyah's eyes softened. "This is beautiful, Jamal. Thank you, Jim. Mr. Harrison. He told us about you," Jamal said, his voice hushed. "He said you were one of the greatest leaders he ever knew. He said you always fought for what was right, no matter the cost." Aaliyah chuckled. "Jim says too much, but he's a good man. A true legend." Jamal nodded. "He is. And so are you, General. We wanted you to know that we see you, all of you." As Jamal left, Aaliyah stood in her doorway, holding the framed photograph. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the quiet street. She thought of Jim, the janitor who was a legend. She thought of the two officers, their careers destroyed by their own prejudice. And she thought of herself, a black woman who had risen to the highest ranks of the military, only to be handcuffed on her own street. The incident had been humiliating, infuriating, but it had also been a stark reminder of the battles that still needed to be fought, not with bombs and bullets, but with truth and accountability. Her call to the Pentagon had been a tactical maneuver, a swift and decisive strike against injustice. Kit had destroyed careers, yes, but it had also, she hoped, planted a seed of change, a ripple effect that might, in time, lead to a more just and equitable world. She walked back into her study, placing the photograph on her desk, beside a small, polished wooden plaque engraved with the Army values: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, personal courage. She had lived by those values her entire life, and she would continue to do so, even in retirement, because some battles, she knew, were never truly over. And some legends like hers and like Jim's were meant to inspire, to remind the world that true power lies not in authority, but in integrity, and that prejudice, no matter how deeply ingrained, would always eventually face its reckoning. The quiet hum of her secure phone line, now silent, seemed to echo the profound truth of the day. The world might have seen a woman walking her dog, but the Pentagon knew her as General Olea Vance, and two racist cops, in their arrogance, had learned, to their eternal regret, that sometimes the most unassuming figures carry the most devastating power. Their careers destroyed, their lives irrevocably altered, they served as a stark, public example of what happens when prejudice meets an immovable force. And Olea Vance, the general, the woman, the legend, continued her walk, her head held high, her purpose clear.